Hello, I'm back. This morning, as you know, I did you a short post on the British steel loss of manufacturing of British steel in Britain. We'll have to import it from now on. That affects our defence that we've just promised to put up with another 0.5%, I believe, to 2% of our gross domestic product. And how can we do that if we've got no British steel? It's not made anymore. It's being closed down at the moment. British Steel, why it's called British Steel anymore, I don't know. It's a Chinese-owned company, and they've said that they're closing it down. It's with the loss of 1,700 jobs, and they've said that because the government is saying they must go green and they must take on electric generators rather than gas and coal-fired generators to the furnaces, to power the furnaces and make the steel. And so they've said it will cost them £1 billion. The government's offered them 500,000, half of what they need, and they've said no. Now they've made a £700,000 loss before they were taxed. So, you can understand why they're saying no, but why it's Chinese owned. The British Steel is owned by Chinese. The Jaguar is owned by Tata Steel, an Indian company. Why have we sold all our industry off? We were the originators of the industrial revolution, and now we rely on foreign companies, and they've said, we're not going to put up with it anymore. We're closing it down by the end of June. The government has said, well, we'll talk to them in June. Too late, government, too late. Get it sorted now. You cannot keep our commitments to. Starmer's been over to Ukraine. He said, we're going to protect you. How? We've got no steel to make our tanks, to make our aircrafts, to make our guns, to make our armaments. Talk sense. Okay, so I've gone off topic because what I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon, and sorry if I stutter a bit, I was in hospital, that's why I left the post this morning, said I was going into see the doctors and that. It's left me a bit fuzzy, and I'm sort of pretending it hasn't, but it has. But here we go. And now I'm going to do a disclaimer on this one because this story is not by me. This story is authored by Michael Deacon. Now, if you don't know who Michael Deacon is, he's a columnist and he's the assistant editor of the Telegraph News. Now, I do make a little comment at the end, but all of this is from Michael Deacon. So he said, a row has erupted over the BBC programme for small children. Apparently, some parents believe that Hey Dougie, it's a TV programme. I've never heard of it. I don't watch television anyway, and certainly not children's programmes. But Hey Dougie is H-E-Y, Hey. Dougie, D-U-G-G-E. Perhaps some of you know it, if you're parents of young children. It's a popular cartoon series, I'm told, about cute little animals. And it has been subtly promoting gender ideology to its audiences of 5 years old. 5-year-old audience of 5-year-olds, and they're doing gender ideology. Okay, they base this suspicion, this is the parents, on the fact that in one episode, a raccoon, because they're all furry animals, is referred to as using gender-neutral pronouns. Other animals, characters, are given the pronouns his and her, yet the raccoon, mysteriously, is given the pronoun their, T-H-E-I-R. This, the parents infer, suggests that the raccoon identifies as non-binary. Now, for its part, the BBC has dismissed these claims. They say Wren the raccoon, his name's Wren. Of course, you'd have a raccoon named after a bird, a species, but never mind. Insists the spokesman is not, this is what the spokesman insists, is not a non-binary character. All I can say is I should hope not. Introducing a non-binary character would be totally inappropriate for a programme with such young viewers, 5 years old. And it wouldn't be much fun for those viewers' parents either. After all, little children are by nature extremely inquisitive, so it could lead to some terribly awkward conversations at home. Just imagine. Daddy, what's non-binary? Well, you see, let's see. Well, how shall I put this? Basically, darling, non-binary is a type of gender identity. What's gender identity, Daddy? Good question. Very, very good question. Think of it like a special sort of game. You know, that we all play, but this one is played by grown-ups, which has extremely strict rules. What happens is a man says he's now a lady, and then everyone else has to agree, or they get lots of trouble. They get into lots of trouble, and they lose their jobs. Especially ladies. Men sometimes get away with saying they think a man's who's now a lady is still a man. But if ladies say they don't want the man who's now a lady to take his or rather her clothes off in the ladies' changing room, everybody gets very cross and shouts at them. Little child replies, I see. But what's non-binary, Daddy? Well, non-binary is someone who says, I'm not a man or a lady. Or in this case, I'm not a man raccoon or a lady raccoon. So instead of calling the raccoon he or she, which would denote male or female, they call it a they. As if, or rather, they were several raccoons instead of just one, and if you don't call it, or rather them, they, you'll get in lots of trouble too. Wouldn't it be easy? Would it? Especially if you're a 5-year-old. If they go on to repeat your explanation to them to other children at the school. Because teachers might deem your phrasing to be insufficiently inclusive. In which case, both you and your 5-year-old will probably be spending the next year in detention. On the whole, therefore, I doubt I'm alone in hoping that the BBC will not be filling its children's cartoons with characters who are non-binary, or for that matter, genderqueer, pangender, demigender, or gender fluid. Adults who describe themselves using such terminology would no doubt be delighted if the BBC were to affirm them in their fashion. But should parents have to explain gender identity to a 5-year-old when some of us find it difficult enough to understand it ourselves? Anyway, it's funny how things turn out. Back in the late 1990s, when Teletubbies, which I presume is another television programme from the BBC, it says another BBC hit, was first shown, some parents thought that it set a bad example to little children because the characters in it all talked gibberish. Well, is that any different to some of our members of Parliament? Shouldn't have said that, should I? Have a knock on the door. Those parents didn't know they were born. Now, I would point out that the BBC children's programme for the very, very young were and are vehicles for sexual innuendo, spoken by the voices behind and even in front of the camera. What do you think? Am I talking out the top of my head like a Teletubby? Oh, that's Mr. Blobby. I remember Mr. Blobby. Okay, so your comments, please. I'd love to hear your comments on this one. And don't forget to subscribe and let me do my little jingle, which is doesn't cost you a penny, doesn't cost you a cent, doesn't even cost you a rupee. It's totally free. Okay, enough from me. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to the end. And be good, be safe, and goodbye from DJ. Bye for now. Bye.